May Jesus be praised and onward with Mary. Have a good and holy day to all of you, dear children, in the sacred hearts of Jesus and Mary, and in the most chaste heart of Saint Joseph. Welcome back to our morning feature, Saints and Coffee. Today is Tuesday, the 4th of February. Just kidding. I just wanted to say it's an important day because it's Brother Celestino's birthday. Our best wishes on behalf of the small remainder, best wishes also coming in from the regional groups. In pole position is Mosca, who sends his best wishes to the faithful of the small resto to Brother Celestino. So on this feast day, today the Church celebrates the liturgical memory of Saint Corsini, Tuscan bishop. And I also wanted to say that today it's a special day. Our Lady of Fire. On the 4th of February in Forlì, we celebrate this Marian feast of Our Lady of Fire, patron saint of the city. This festival originated on the night of Wednesday, the 4th of February, 1428. The image of the Madonna is displayed in a school in Forlì, located on Via Leone Cobelli, inside which, during winter, a fireplace was lit to warm the students. On the evening of the 4th of February, 1428, a fire, which started from this hearth, completely destroyed the school. The flames continued to burn for several days. It was therefore with some astonishment that the image of the Madonna was found intact among the rubble. It's something that has also happened recently for the bigoted atheists. Incredulous. It happened recently, too, in the Los Angeles fires in the United States of America. They posted pictures of a villa devoured by flames, but with the statue of the Madonna, I think it was the statue of the Madonna, practically unscathed. And this happened there in Forlì. And so there, where it arose, where this school was, where the fire happened, stands today the Church of the Miracle of Our Lady of the Fire, protector of the city of Forlì. Every year in Forlì, in memory of the miraculous event on the night between the 4th and the 5th of February, red lights that burn all night should be displayed in the windows in memory of the one that was avoided. Fire. So, Brother Celestino has a birthday. It's also the feast of Our Lady of Fire. What shall we wish him? That Our Lady may always give him this fire in his soul, in his heart, and also on his feet. Well, a little fire, rather, under his feet. The right one, so that he doesn't suffer too much from the cold and can resist in this path of radical observance of the Franciscan rule. Best wishes then to Brother Celestino. Best wishes to the faithful of the small remainder who are from Forlì and surrounding areas at the Feast of Our Lady of Fire. Right, today is Tuesday. So this evening at 9 o'clock, don't miss the catechesis from my book, The Eagle and the Sun. You can find the book by calling the Radio Domina Nostra office. We've reached the 4th episode and will continue meditating on the prologue. Share, share, share. Don't miss tonight's meeting. Many of you congratulated me on last week's episode. Around the prologue, the Word was with God. With all that means, a faithful young man, even with the little that's left, who stopped me in Milan. The catechesis is really very interesting. They should be explored even further, because what is being said is very dense. However, you have the book and the bibliography available, so you can for that. I'm writing it. The book, explore it through the book and then also through the bibliography. I'll be waiting for you this evening, so at 9 p.m., don't miss it. Last night, Madonna made a reflection, in my opinion, surprising, unexpected, on the collapse of the Twin Towers, on everything that this means, etc. To be honest, I followed it up to a certain point, because then I couldn't, but we thank him. And the catechesis, the reflection, last night's point, you can find it available on the Radio Domina Nostra playlist. Really very interesting. We congratulate Father Ramon for having had the time to, because I know what it means, organize this series of reflections with the point. We're getting ready for the events next Saturday and Sunday, Saturday the 8th of February and Sunday the 9th of February. We'll be in Genoa and Turin, respectively. We'll be in Turin on Sunday for the draw. We'll be giving away the statue of St. John Mosca for free. Let's see who wins it. At the Hotel Pacific Fortino, Strada del Fortino, that's the one we always go to, a short distance, about 300 meters from the Basilica of Our Lady Help of Christians of San Giovanni Mosca, the sanctuary, at 4 p.m. The same in Genoa, also at 4 p.m., and also in the same hotel where we had our last meetings. There, right in the heart of Genoa. Holiday Inn, Via Milano 47, also at 4 p.m. Saturday in Genoa, Sunday in Turin at 4 p.m. Naturally, the most significant appointment remains the one on Tuesday week. They are from today. 8 days in preparation for the great feast of Our Lady of Lourdes. Come to the event. We'll do it at 6 p.m. because it's a weekday, and on Tuesday we'll be at the DH Hotel, DB Hotel, Verona Airport and Convention Center, Aeroporto Road, number 20, in Casale di Verona at 6 p.m. Come, because then we'll welcome the statue of Our Lady, and then we'll have this short procession. And then especially after the Mass, there will be the anointing of the sick, which is not the sacrament. But since it's World Day of the Sick, which finds its spiritual home in Lourdes, and since we're all ill, every one of us, we can receive the oil of the Good Samaritan. So come, bring your sick, bring the people you care about who believe in this path, and we'll see each other next Tuesday, free of charge, no booking required, in Verona. These are the valuable appointments. Naturally, all of this without forgetting the mega gatherings that we do from time to time. I wrote a post that production will show you now. Please read it and comment if you'd like. Because so many of you read but don't comment, to tell you the truth. This has lacked the co-protagonism of many loyal followers of the small change, to tell you the truth. I'm a little bit sorry about that. I regret it, but never mind. I mean, it would be useful if he commented. Yesterday I wrote a post, Qui prodest, meaning who benefits, aimed at journalists. It's a bit of a summary of the reflection done yesterday morning. The production team is showing you the always necessary images of the meetings that we do around the area, starting with yesterday's, the other one in Milan, with the many faithful who flock to these prayer meetings. In Milan, in Verona, the first famous meeting in Verona in 2018, in Florence, the Florence Sports Palace, perhaps one of the most emblematic images that we have at our disposal. We filled the sports hall, and then again I remind you of the 2 mega rallies in Rome, and then the one in Bologna. I'd like to ask the director and their team to get some more footage, but it's always the same, unfortunately. And it would be nice to have more, especially from the point of view of the overall picture, because these are close-up images of Brother Celestino, myself, for heaven's sake, beautiful. But I want everyone to see how many people there were in Verona, in Florence, in Milan, in Bologna, in Rome. Those are the images that matter most and that make people think. Because the media, as you know, we said it in recent days, they don't talk about it. They don't talk about it. Here, this, for example, is a picture. This is what I was asking for. Look at this stuff. Look at this stuff. Here, this is Milan, the 2nd of November, the 11th of February 2000. I can't see the date because there's the Lord's logo. 24, there it is. Milan, the 2nd of February 2024, the 2nd of November, the 2nd of November. For the celebration. Anyway, you see the images which speak for themselves. The 9th of June in Florence. These, in my opinion, are among the strongest from Florence because it's the arena. Look at that. There were people down below and people in the upper stands. What reality, movement, association does this? I hope there's a willingness to stop the demonization of this association and this faith movement, which it doesn't recognize, because in short, that's it. In the end, we have nothing special except for the fact, he said. Nothing. That Bergoglio isn't the Pope. That's the whole point. And of course, that's what the media don't want to talk about. Anyway, we're going to carry on down our own path. The financial investment. Fioricari is always remarkable. So I recommend, as long as you help us, never fail to help us with the possibility that you go to the bank counters, the IBAN, the current account, the PayPal, they're all in the description, as well as now, in this moment, if you want, the logo of the post I wrote yesterday, appealing to journalists, is also in the description. So they'll stop attacking us. For once, we can make a non-aggression pact. Anyway, you're also invited to participate, like share, comment. A lot depends on you too. Don't just be passive recipients of the witness to the truth that we're bringing forward, but participate with great commitment as well. So I think I said it. Tonight, yes, at 9 p.m., there's the catechesis on the prologue. It's very high level, as you're seeing, however. Then you can find the in-depth analysis. In my book, if you want, there's no need for me to say everything. In the book, you'll find further details. We take it with us to prayer meetings, and you can also request it from the Radio Domina office. Let's move on to today's episode, which is quite interesting and rather demanding. The title that the director is showing you now is from today's broadcast. Quite interesting because it highlights a decisive moment in this historical period. The title is Bergoglio's UO ideology and its eclipse. His eclipse, whose, of both the woke ideology and Bergoglio. I'll proceed calmly because it's not an easy topic to deal with. Not in itself, but with respect to the user base of the faithful, which are many, including the elderly. So probably some, not all, have more difficulty understanding. But if those who are here with me understand, it means that everyone will be able to understand. Wait, I forgot. Something important. On Sunday 2 days ago, we launched the Perpetual Rosary Initiative. The Perpetual Rosary means signing up so that every day there's a time slot in which, taking turns, the Rosary is prayed, in such a way as to guarantee it for 24 hours continuously, in rotation. So one takes it, let's say for a day, 3 days, at the time of 12:20 a.m., and then move it to another time and vice versa. To organize this, I thought we could start, God willing, on the 11th of February, the feast of Our Lady of Lourdes, and the 12th anniversary now. From next week, I believe all week, we'll talk again about Pope Benedict's resignation, about the matter of the issue of the pressure from the Socialist International, the Obama-Clinton administration, the irreverent stances taken by national episcopates against the increasingly isolated Pope Benedict, the Corsini affair within the Vatican, the VatiLeaks scandal, the closure of Vatican bank accounts, VatiLeaks, the Swift affair, the theft of documents by Paolo Gabriele, his butler, his non-attendance at La Sapienza University of Rome, where the Pope was due to give a lecture, and all the other issues, including the Declaratio, because that is a document. I just like to invite each of the little king's followers to do one thing. Keep it somewhere at home, in plain sight. Pope Benedict's declaration. Because for most of the mainstream, let's say for the mainstream majority, it's a closed matter. How was the issue on the American Republican right meant to be closed? And yet that's what you have. You see me on the news. I don't know if you watch the news, but anyway, you've seen what he does. Donald Trump has himself filmed putting that signature on there. And now truly, the world is changing before our very eyes. I repeat it ad nauseum because I know you, loyal followers of the little remnant. I'm not canonizing Donald Trump. I'm not saying he's a saint. I'm just acknowledging what's happening. For example, he put tariffs on this. What should make people think? By the way, for example, regarding culture, we'll see Bergoglio's pro-immigration stance of the false church of these wretched Italian bishops. Now they start to shut up and change the subject. Bergoglio is now throwing himself at children. Now the issue is the children. Why? Look, they're like foxes. That one's so cunning, even the devil's like, this guy's got me beat. Because he saw that the wind is blowing against him, because of woke culture. I'll explain what it is. I've mentioned this before. The woke ideology, which is kind of like the rainbow flag, pacifism, environmentalism, feminism, immigrationism, animalism. It's not doing well under the Trump administration, which isn't messing around. Because I think everyone who isn't on the anti-woke side, the leading figures of the woke world, are the ones who are now gobsmacked because they see that this guy isn't messing around. I think they expected a revolution, but not to this extent. Here's an example. You know that America, the United States, and Mexico share a border. And for years and years, this whole business of the wall separating the two nations that Trump wanted has been on everyone's lips, including Bergoglio's, who urged Americans not to vote for Trump because he mistreats immigrants. Trump, in recent days, has imposed tariffs on the Mexican economy, which is already considerably more fragile than the U.S. economy, on which it depends. What did the president do? Follow these things because it's history as we study in the apocalypse. The setting, the stage for the clash. What's happening? In the last few days, the Mexican president has raised her voice, spoken out strongly. To what end? Trump hasn't changed his mind. And so the president of Mexico, Claudia Sheinbaum, accepts the Trump administration's demands to stop. And control the flow of Mexican immigrants into the United States of America. What does Trump do? Trump immediately removes the tariffs on Mexico. Incredible. Trump immediately removes the tariffs on Mexico. And what happens? What happens is he intervenes saying, let's hope this also leads to blocking the drugs coming from Mexico. There's one drug in particular going around that kills. So this is to tell you how. Now, faced with this scenario, what does Bergoglio do? What do the Vatican Zuppies do? They didn't expect this. In my opinion, they didn't expect it to this extent. Because Trump signed executive orders banning the introduction and spread of gender ideology in U.S. schools. Do you think that's insignificant? When in Italy, it's the nuns, hateful nuns, who talk to children about gender ideology. The nuns, you understand? The nuns in Italian schools talk to the children about the fact that there's the willy and the willy. There's the willy, but if you don't feel like a boy, they make a distinction between gender and identity. By gender, you're like this, nuns. The nuns and even the Salesians in the oratories go and talk about this evil stuff. You're male because you have a penis, but if you don't feel male and you want to be something else, you can be. Because biological sex doesn't identify identity. And some notable magazines, like Catholic Civilization, what a disgusting false church this is. Let's hope God provides us with a Catholic Trump soon. A saint, though. A saint, though. A saint, though. We need Trumpism in Rome. We need Catholic Trumpism. Don't put up pictures of Trump, otherwise it'll look like I'm promoting him. Please. But we need a revolution in the church, which perhaps is starting from the bottom up, because from the top down, who the heck is going to do it? But do you find anyone in the church who has the guts that Trump has? Do you? No, Cardinal Sarah or Bishop Schneider from before. We saw footage, not yesterday, January 21st or 2nd, but we watched it yesterday. Let's continue. And so Trump signs this ban on the spread of gender ideology, which is one of the main planks of woke ideology in schools, as well as banning the Gender transition. The one, for example, truly, blatantly promoted by the new preacher to the papal household, Father Roberto Palladini, who talks about gender transition, as if it were an obvious thing. Trump says, absolutely, it's only done under certain conditions, that is when they are over 18 and the conditions are right, because this should happen only when it's necessary, not because it's fashionable. In short, it seems to me that Cyrus, king of Persia, is advancing on Rome. So what does he do, Bergoglio? What does the false church do? Incredible. Now Bergoglio said yesterday that he has to write a letter apostolica, an exhortation on children, because children must be defended. Look, be careful. He hasn't spoken about abortion for years. He hasn't spoken for years about the defense of life in the womb. Since they're getting hammered right now, these people from the false church, now they're playing the Catholics. Now for a while they'll pretend to have changed their minds. So yesterday there was a Pope Francis, unrecognizable. At this meeting, well, sure, all right, it was prepared beforehand, but who's to say they didn't change it at the last minute? Because the icy wind of the Moscow polar bear, now with the star-spangled one from Washington, is blowing on Rome, on the dome. And so, the defense of life. We will be against abortion. But that's not what he got. But you see, the cowardly schizophrenia of these rabble, who are in the Vatican. But wasn't it him who shook hands with Sister Janine, his pro-choice American friend, during the Biden era? I mean, Joe Biden, who was a friend of Bergoglio, has been a friend of Bergoglio. But it wasn't Bergoglio who embraced and blessed the actress. I don't remember her name. Don't remind me because it's not important. Who boasts of having had many abortions and several divorces. But it's not Bergoglio who, for years, has ridden on the Laudato Si, the brothers and sisters all, the Americas and Letizia, and even the infamous Fiducia Supplicans and the woke ideology, which look as we shall now see. To minorities with ideological approaches, animal rights, animals, radical feminism, historical revisionism, for example, when Bergoglio goes to Canada and throws mud at his Jesuit missionary predecessors who went there to bring the gospel. And we come to apologize to you, Native Americans. Now we do the grandmother's dance. We evoke the spirits like you did before these predecessors of mine arrived. No, that's enough now. Slowly, the serpent sheds its skin. So yesterday, I don't know if you followed it, there was this shift whereby Bergoglio, an unrecognizable Bergoglio, I don't know about you, I feel very sorry for him. I see him like that. Bloated, my goodness, an impressive thing. No pope has ever been reduced like that in old age. It's true that none have reached that age. Of the most recent popes, he's the most advanced in age. From the point of view of, it's a shame he's not pope, for him who sits on the throne of Peter, but he's 88 years old. No, I'm not kidding. But why is he so puffy? And then, scruffy, it's the ultimate desecration of the Roman pontiff. Yesterday we watched the news with the nuns, and there he was, sitting in a wheelchair, with his white cassock hiked up. You could see his sock and his leg. Seen anything like that? Those shoes? It's total scruffiness, but a change of direction, at least officially, so the fight's at the door, and we'll take care of the children. But let's get back to us. Woke ideology. In recent years, the false church led by Bergoglio and then his paladins, those to whom there is, who sends, keeps sending, what are those things called? To ask to do something, change things, recognize that Benedict was the Pope. So what did they do? They systematically spread it. For example, the goldsmiths. In Palermo it arrived like that. He came to Palermo. but Ripoll in Turin, Zuppi in Bologna, Battaglia in Naples. These are the big ones of the big dioceses, no? Of the large dioceses, but also then in the small dioceses. They are all an episcopate. We're talking about Italy, who for years has been hassling us about welcoming immigrants, as the Pope wants. The Gospel doesn't talk about welcoming immigrants. It's true that Jesus says, "I was a stranger and you welcomed me," but it's not an immigration slogan. That one. It's charity, and that's it. So much so that the pontiffs, the serious ones, like John Paul II and Paul VI, strongly hope for two things, at least, two or three, which are sacrosanct. The first is the right to remain in one's homeland, even before emigrating, because if one emigrates, the conditions for living there are not met. The second is the right of states to manage responsible immigration. You can't think of welcoming immigrants the way Trump and his administration did in San Francisco. In the States, we saw yesterday, there's a percentage of immigrants who deal drugs and also die with those they sell drugs to. Responsible acceptance is needed, of course. These are the criteria. We've also seen the Italian bishops. Do you remember the goldsmith? Look, I don't forget during these horrible years. Let's hope this is the time that something is changing, because we can't take it anymore. We can't take it anymore. Do you remember the goldsmith who used to go to the port? But why are you going to the port? To the port to welcome the immigrants. But is this the role of a bishop? Is this a bishop's role, taking migrants in? But since Pope Francis, not the gospel, Pope Francis wants that. Do you remember his first apostolic journey with so much strain? There it was, really, you could see that Schwab, the great world powers, have him. He wrote to do that. He went on the boat to Lampedusa. He threw flowers into the sea. The pastoral staff with a crook taken from the oars of a migrant boat, almost as if wanting to. And recently, Bergoglio, even before Trump got on his feet, ended up saying, "Since you Italians." But I find this serious. Look, I personally, an Italian citizen, a serious man, I find it serious that someone who isn't even Italian tells Italians, "Since you don't have children, welcome the immigrants." And this while St. Peter's Square is barricaded. No one enters St. Peter's because they don't open the doors of Santa Marta and the houses, the properties that the Vatican has in Rome. And around the world, why should they? Italian families, immigrationism. And then let's not even talk about the woke galaxy relating to gender. And then there's the gender woke minority, meaning those who are male, they have a penis, but they don't feel male and are discriminated against. Or those with a flower, but they don't feel like women, so they're discriminated against. So we've seen churches where initiatives have taken place that are shameful, what we've witnessed in these recent years. Let's hope this is the time someone like Zuppi resigns, that someone like Bate emigrates themselves. They get on a barge and leave, Zuppi. Battle the goldsmith and the fox. But you might be asking, ladies, are you forgetting about Pini? No, I'm not forgetting it. Quite right, I don't mention it. Hoping that's the case, and being prepared to be proven wrong, because you never know how things are going at the moment. Delpini's appointment in Milan wasn't Bergoglio's, wasn't imposed by Bergoglio, it was desired by Ratzinger's government. Then it was Bergoglio who sent him there, so they say. Delpini is a moderate, he's never done those, up to now, weird things, and he's never authorized initiatives of this kind. Here, like for example, the goldsmith shop in Palermo does, with the LGBT celebrations, the rainbow masses and things like that. That's why I don't mention him, because I'd hope that Delpini in Milan, like Moragli seems to be in Venice, are on a different stance. But basically they are, in those dioceses there. So it's a false church which no longer follows the gospel, but follows woke ideology. So what is this woke ideology that Bergoglio was promoting until yesterday? Apparently today he wants to dedicate himself to abortion, to children. Writing a letter after he wrote woke letters, on minorities considered to be the recipients of this Marxist-style revolution. How will you see it? Wokeness, as it's called at the walk. It's a rehashing in ideological and naturally revisionist terms of the Marxist reading of history. Ideological approaches like radical feminism. So we've seen this recently even in the church, actually, at the forefront, I wonder. The American administration has always had influence over the Vatican. We know this. Even back in Wojtyla's time, it was like that. He was a giant, but he was very careful. Wojtyla, John Paul II, in his dealings first with Reagan, then who was there? Clinton, well, you know, those things. Bush, even before Bush Sr. and then Bush Jr. For example, the synod has closed, the so-called Pope. Francis announced that the synod, however, would continue. The one that wants women deacons, the altar, that sort of thing. Walk, in fact, that it would go ahead. Interesting to know what their intention will be now to carry this forward in the face of this unexpected axis, where we have little interest in readings of a political, historical, historico-political, and geopolitical nature. For these insights, I refer you to some interesting reflections, in my opinion, even if you decide you don't agree with them, by Diego Fusaro, who talks about a liberal international that opposes yesterday's socialist international. But beyond this, there's an axis, and we'll see how it goes. Who knows what will become of the Watchist agenda of Bergoglio and the false church? Now you'll see that these bishops, slowly, gradually, they'll be forced to survive. Incredible to change their style, you'll see. Let's move on. Radical feminism. These women, you see them daily, always on about women. We don't notice with the same intensity, the violence, those things there, because the vision of the male patriarchy must be demonized, etc. And then animal rights. What was once the Marxist contrast between the bourgeoisie and the proletariat now has to become that between the ruling classes and the minorities. But there has to be a revolution. Interesting, feminism, animal rights, animals. And then, as we'll see, historical revisionism, that is, revising history. For example, Cosetta, European Western colonization of America, of the New World. In the words of the unreachable Pope Francis, the so-called Pope Francis, it's a dark page. And then the environment, and above all, the fight against gender. Woke culture puts all of this together, and it uses the so-called cancel culture, that is, the culture of cancellation. Because if the revolution is to propose new social systems, new educational models, new gender identities, it's first necessary to destroy the existing ones. That's Bergoglio's work these years. Wrong, am I? So you see, those who defend me, calling me colorful and coarse, are the colorful ones. They'd be better off, once and for all, keeping their mouths shut and accepting a confrontation with me. They see that I'm right. Everyone can see now that I'm right. Cancel culture is what's used as a revolutionary outpost by woke ideology. Because I repeat, to propose new educational models like gender theory, you have to eliminate the existing ones, demonize them. How? By making them look outdated or inefficient, now useless. Everyone remembers the tearing down of statues of famous figures from our history. Statues like that of Christopher Columbus were torn down. Who's no longer considered a hero because the indigenous people were doing just fine, and the indigenous people are one of the letters of the alphabet. Wow, Bergoglio's going to Canada, and instead of talking about the gospel, Jesus Christ and the cross, salvation, redemption, and sin, eschatology, he goes there to apologize to the indigenous people for what the Jesuit missionaries to whom he belongs have done. In past centuries, those who were slaughtered because the indigenous people were fine where they were. This is the revision of history that some social justice groups want to promote. In the same way, it's about lobbies, woke, like the LGBT one, radical feminism, pantheistic environmentalism, animal rights activism, which want to promote a new vision of reality. This movement, in the end, is permeating the whole of society, has permeated the whole of society. It has succeeded through the media and through new, unexpected leaders like Bergoglio and Vaticano to propose this alternative vision. And so the blessing of gay couples can happen because woke reigns supreme. It's a minority that must be protected. And the revolution applied no longer to the antithetical relationship between the proletariat and the bourgeoisie, between poor and rich. To put it in one word, but between gay people and people, quote-unquote, how can I say it, heterosexuals. I wouldn't want to fail to answer. Normal subjects, no, it's not about normal because those aren't subnormal. It's about heterosexual people. No? Heterosexuals, they're the majority, and the majority must be fought. Because the prevailing model isn't the majority because nature wants it that way. It's the majority because a cultural vision of the past imposed it. But now this new cultural vision proposes a new model. And so we have this minority that suffers, this persecuted minority like the poor. When Marx, writing Das Kapital, proposed the anti-bourgeois revolution, I don't know if I managed to explain that. There's no gospel in all of this. Bergoglio doesn't read the gospel, he only uses it for this ideology. I gave the example. Let's take the other example. The other example is the family. Traditional America, Leticia, divorced and remarried couples can take communion. De facto couples are equal to normal ones. And so Bergoglio, who is constantly being photographed with heterosexuals and transsexuals, who writes to Vladimir Luxuria, enjoy life, make your own way, don't worry, no call to conversion. And then again, that guy, Fernandez, who also comes from Argentina, photographed just before going to Rome with a transsexual. The stole life how it comes. The traditional family is a, let's say, dominant model, not because it corresponds to nature, and therefore if it corresponds to nature, its fact corresponds to God's design. Because what 𝐥'𝐴, the Greek philosophers already said, corresponds to the theological vision of things. Because if it's according to nature, therefore it is according to God, for those who have a metaphysical vision. Anyway, yes, even if you don't, the metaphysical vision is natural. No, it's not natural, it's the prevailing model. So anyone who doesn't conform to that model is the minority. Divorced and remarried people, de facto couples, alternative families, extended families, etc. The revolutionary Bergoglio, interesting, this category, adapts. 𝐤𝐮 promotes this direction. So wokeism uses cancel culture, that is the culture of cancellation, of tearing down statues, to persecute historians, rewrite history, marginalize those who don't think like them, and publicly ridicule political and religious figures. See what happened to Domina, to Brother Celestino, to the priests of the sodality, excommunicated and cast aside, undoubtedly because, first reason, Bergoglio isn't the Pope. But within this, it's clear that someone like Brother Celestino will never embrace woke culture, unless he goes completely mad. And so the marginalization of those who still promote the dominant models. The contrast between Bergoglio and Caffarra is interesting. When Bergoglio said he became Pope, he never actually became Pope, and then he went to inaugurate the Carpi Cathedral. I think it was, and Caffarra was already emeritus. Cardinal Caffarra, who tried in every way to speak with Bergoglio, and Bergoglio ran away. Except then he had him come next to him for the group photo. So no one knew he was against this. Ready? So you see, there's a woke culture that has focused above all on gender ideology in an obsessive way. Obsessively. So, faced with this cancel culture, it seemed that woke ideology that was the one that was going to win. And yet now we're seeing a counter trend. I have here with me a magazine, Il Timone, a monthly magazine, Unacum, which in its January issue has an interesting article titled The Rise and Fall of Woke. I'm reading it, signed by Lorenzo Formicola. Historic brands, by the way, for this to happen. I was forgetting this aspect here, so we can better understand the article. What time is it? 10 already, mamma mia. Speaking of this, I want to say two important things. The first, that for these minorities with the revolution, as Bergoglio would call it, to be protected, migrants, gays, the LGBT world, feminism, etc. So for example, in the church, women, now Bergoglio, he puts them everywhere. Sponsorship is also needed. This is very important. We have seen in past years, and still see in Europe, as we will say now, because while in America it is now in total decline, the columnist Lorenzo Formicola gives us a good analysis of how things stand globally. That is, wokeism is dying. Wokeism is dying in America, in the United States, because it's now lacking sponsorship. The big multinationals that until recently, before Trump, were there with huge billboards in Times Square, promoting even subconsciously the woke minority revolution. Now they've distanced themselves and they're no longer financing it. That's the first interesting thing to say. I forgot the second one. I'll tell you when it comes to me. So the ant says, many historians have chosen to no longer lend themselves to the evaluations of the Corporate Equality Index. The Rainbow Guarantee label, so the LGBT world, conceived by the Human Rights Campaign Association, the largest U.S. organization defending people in the LGBT community. It's important news. I mean, historic brands, advertising, sponsorship. It won't work with LGBT groups in the U.S. Signs of fatigue for that America that had committed to teaching how to be good citizens. For several months, a growing number of companies, mostly American, has entered a resounding phase of rejection of the so-called diversity, equity, and inclusion policies. The word inclusion is perhaps the one that Bergoglio and the false church have used the most, isn't it? Inclusion. These guys have organized themselves well, though, haven't they? Ciro's here. Here's Ciro Nebuchadnezzar. Ciro from Washington, Nebuchadnezzar from Moscow. So prescribed by the UN agenda that the Biden era had embraced with love. That's why there's this flirtation between Biden and Bergoglio. By early 25, the woke movement system shows signs of crisis. This is interesting because it's something we don't know. The television, the Italian information, they don't tell us. To the point that The Economist wanted to conduct an investigation and found itself certifying nothing other than the awakening of an anti-woke U.S. soul. He reviewed the surveys collected over the last 25 years by the most important research institutes, Gallup, General Social Survey, Pew, and YouGov. They all record wokeism, the most up-to-date and extreme version of political correctness, in decline. And to corroborate the trend revealed by opinion polls, The Economist measured the frequency with which the Los Angeles Times, New York Times, New York Post, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, and Washington Times used it between 1970 and 2023. When the indomitable Trump reappears, having been defeated in the previous election. Terms like awakening, microaggressions, oppression, inclusion, white privilege, transphobia, immigration. It was revealed that between 2019 and 2021, there was a frequency of 154 daily uses of these terms, and then from 2023, vanished in those everyday moments of America. So it's a revolution, which I don't know at this point if the bigoted Vatican diplomacy, because it follows a false pope, was aware. Probably not. Maybe yes. They waited until the die was cast and Bergoglio is a subdeacon to the children, which is a different way of trying to ensure the survival, like a snake that tries in every way to coil up as it dies, to ensure the survival of the minority. Now, I don't know any more about the LGBT community. You'll see they'll talk about it less. Trust me on this, because there's Trump. Because there's Trumpism, which is no longer just Trump. It's a new sensibility that the media, the world's powers, the people, like little old me, have tried in every way to crush. Empty churches while we fill halls, they ignore us. But sooner or later, this will explode. That's the real revolution. Got it. I don't know if it's clear. And what was I saying? The Vatican Revolution didn't deal with it. He pretended not to notice this counter trend, which is now exploding because the Americans voted for Trump, and he didn't win with a coup. Like Bergoglio, the Vatican. The same has been found on television. So not only do the newspapers agree, but television too. Can you imagine if this happened in Italy? Going against the trend, Bergoglionism no longer exists, and they start to seriously deal with this. Popular movement of the little remnant. The first serious interviews are starting, without aggression, without media blitzes, at the private property front door. But instead, a serious debate where leading figures, whom I was calling for yesterday, deal with this matter seriously. Here not to demonize it. Who knows, it might happen sooner or later in Italy too. Anyway, television stations themselves in America, looking at ABC, NBC, CBS, and Fox News broadcasts, and the book industry, so publishing as well, looking at the titles of the 30 best-selling books each week, from 2010 to 2024. The UFO mentions peaked in 2022, when the Synod was in Rome, and then shortly after, 2 years later, the infamous thing came out. Trust and plea. Since then, from 2022, when Trump began, unbeknownst to us Italians, to go around the squares of America, to speak to the people, the counter-trend has begun. Publishers are starting to distance themselves, to the point of an almost complete aversion to woke. Unbelievable. All of this is unbelievable. Here in Europe, Italy, France, no, not yet. We'll reach it. So, in the aftermath of the Floyd murder, the expression white privilege in a single year was used 1,000 times for every million words in the New York Times. In 2023, the woke frequency dropped to, so a year before, it was in the New York Times. The woke vocabulary the year after it was how much? 2 less. In the academic world, right? Now let's move on to universities. The invention of courses with woke references increased by 20%, with lecturers promoting woke ideology in university chairs between 2010 and here too, 2022. Because from 2022 onwards, woke ideology has almost completely disappeared from universities. Rui Teixeira, one of the most important left-wing scholars at the Washington think tank, the American Enterprise Institute, stated, "I think that one day people will look back at the woke era from 2015 to 2025 as a moment of madness." The English sociologist Eric Kaufmann, professor of politics at the University of Buckingham, formerly of London's Birkbeck College, is also a researcher at the Belfer Center of the Kennedy School of Government and Harvard University. This guy's hitting us hard. He explains at the helm that it's thanks to traditional Protestant moralism that wokeness has been able to spread. He explains how wokeness came about. Let's wrap up by looking at two final points. First, the fatigue of young people, initially enthusiastic about this and the situation in Europe. The headlines are, even young people are tired, and then Europe remains sick. Let's start with youth. Get woke, go broke, wake up, and you're ruined. The prophecy printed on the most popular t-shirts throughout the American presidential election campaign, not just among Republicans, has come true. An incredible survey carried out by News has verified that 72% of those aged between 25 and 34, so clearly the group most susceptible in recent years to woke ideology, those same millennials who only a couple of years ago were at the forefront of the fight for inclusion, social justice. We might think of the footballers, the World Cup in Qatar, taking the knee, all the controversies, because a player from Germany, I think, didn't want to do it. So today, they share the sentiment of the anti-woke slogan, Disney, Walt Disney, is leading the way in cautionary tales with its $1 billion burnt as a sacrifice to wokeness. I mean, up until now it was Walt Disney, but now there's Trump. So all the multinationals, since everything always revolves around this, now they're all being more careful, like Mexico, who said, no, we won't cooperate, I'll impose tariffs on you. We've decided to cooperate, understand? Blessed, but sometimes also Benedetto Denar, after the wokeization of Tolkien with the series The Rings of Power. I don't know anything about it. Sembrerebbe ci sia stata una serie televisiva sul Signore degli Angelis in versione woke, but I can't talk about it. Even Amazon announced the havoc that will befall MGM Studios and Prime Video. Maybelline, the popular cosmetics company, has halved its sales. After choosing Dylan Mulvaney, Joe Biden's trans activist friend, as their spokesperson. This did an advert for this cosmetics company, and their costs plummeted. On the contrary, instead of increasing, they've plummeted. Not satisfied with the experience it already had. Anheuser-Busch, the company that produces Bud Light, the best-selling beer in the United States, since it decided to sponsor the woke ideology, from 2022, the year of the targeted campaign, the American brewery has lost 26% of its profits. And finally, we conclude with Europe, which remains ailing. Immigrationism and wokeism exported to Europe. Where we see, he made a comparison between Muslims in Europe and black descendants of slaves in America. That is, Muslims must enjoy all possible rights in Europe, considered one of the classes, those minority realities to advance. They are considered like black people at the time of that guy. What was the name of the defender of black people? But that was a legitimate battle anyway. Legitimate, Martin Luther King, there you go. A dangerous comparison that forced an entire category of people to feel surrounded by enemies. Woke is a prison. You have no chance to integrate, because if you do, someone will call you a traitor. Wokeism is in terminal decline in the United States, but not unfortunately in Europe, says this author. It never arrived in Hungary, and I predict it will never arrive in the Eastern European countries. This gives us confirmation. For example, Father Pavel gives us confirmation. I've spoken to him a few times about this, and he told me it's difficult. In Poland, they're kind of trying, but Orban's Hungary is absolutely uninterested in woke ideology. And we probably won't get there. In those countries, it will never arrive. In England, however, it's only growing. Like in France, I believe it remains Western Europe, the champion of wokeness, along with a bit of Latin America. For the rest, it's rejected. So my dears, I've perhaps given you a lesson, a bit dull but very important to understand which winds are blowing on planet Earth. Okay, we continue to pray the Holy Rosary, I told you that we're doing the... Let's say we promote the perpetual rosary. During the day, we'll give you the telephone number of Domina, who is the one who will take care of it, the contact person for Lombardy, to organize this perpetual rosary. Let us pray as we witness history, and Bergoglio is forced to say that he cares for children, and abortion is a grave matter. Things never said so clearly before, but now they have to change strategy. A chameleon-like dynamic that you will see. It will be completely useless, because if the Eternal Father has decided to reward our sacrifices, our martyrdom, at least in Italy, it means that if the time has come, it will come regardless. We look to Mary, who is here behind me with this beautiful icon, and we pray the Holy Rosary. Let's move on. I'll be waiting for you tonight at 9 p.m. for something completely different, thank God, which is what I'm more expert in. Even if on this, how can I say I manage, meaning 𝐸'Aquila and 𝐼 𝐭𝐫, the book you can request from Radio Domina Nostra, and the 4th episode on the prologue. Share it.